So what's an industry trend you've noticed this year that you think will become major in 2021?
Well, that's kind of a hard question, I think, because I think the trend this year was a major response to COVID and the whole global changes. And it's like a complete mind shift for everyone in the world. It's like the first time, I think, as far as I know, that I've ever experienced where the whole world has kind of come together on a similar thing, right? Like movie stars aren't making movies and all this kind of stuff. So everyone's kind of been stuck at home. So I think the trend, at least for this year, was that people were focused more on their own life at home and being more connected to their own family and maybe even their neighborhood, or if they live on some land, maybe getting in touch with their own land again. And maybe some important questions were raised as far as people's supply chains, like how they get their food and all these things, from the grocery stores. And, what happens if all of a sudden a truck can't deliver fuel to a gas station? And so there's a bit of, I guess, fear at first, but then people kind of, seem to settle in and still earn the same amount of money. So I noticed myself from a small business owner's perspective in a small town. I'm right near Calgary, so Cochrane is a small town where I kind of have my own sub niche here, where I started COCHRANE Tree Care as an arborist, just serving Cochrane because I wasn't relying on Calgary, or didn't need to rely on full-time work per se. So I was just kind of feeling it out, and things were really successful. I just started it last year. So last year, kind of late spring, I did a decent amount of work, but then this year with the whole global trend, and from what I've seen from other arborists and landscaping kind of companies, similar companies, they've had a major increase in business. And I think that's as a result of a lot of people still earning the same amount of money that they were, but they're spending time at home, and they're like, well, I literally cannot go on vacation. I can't spend my money on going out for dinner. So they have all this excess money, and people love to spend money inherently. And why not look after their trees, right? So people are starting to do some renovations in their homes, and I think they're looking after their trees in their yard, which maybe have been neglected for a long time, or maybe they're just noticing that they're dead for the first time. So I think certain industries like mine definitely saw a major increase this year, but I think that's going to change, as we can probably discuss here.
Yeah, that's great. So would you say they were maybe making time for stuff that they hadn't been before because there's just, the distractions of life and vacation, as you said? Like,
hmm I think so. I think a lot of it like literally came down to probably what kind of class of, or income you have for your family as well, right? Like a single dad or mom with a few kids may have less disposable income than, say, some other families that, live on an acreage out here, have lots of income from whatever revenue stream they get, but they are used to going on, a couple of vacations a year, and then they can't do that. So then, they're spending their money on their trees, or they're wanting to do some changes at home so they can just enjoy the place at home. But it probably all depends, I would say. But overall, from the people that I did a lot of work for, it was a lot of people on um, some bigger land around Cochrane, in Calgary, so just outside of Calgary. So I'd say kind of wealthier people. I'm not exactly sure, where they get their income from, if it was like from oil sector as well, or other means. But I also had a lot of retired people as well, that I think were not as affected by COVID. They're used to being at home. They already have a steady income, through retirement and that sort of thing. So there wasn't as much changes to them. So that was nice having them available as customers for a lot of tree work and things. And I think that will continue, but I think a lot of other things are going to change here over time.
yeah, interesting. I hadn't thought about retirees and how they've kind of been more consistent customers. Um, what do you think your top prediction is for how businesses like yours in tree care or even outside of tree care will have to change next year?
Yeah, I guess that kind of ties into your first question, because you asked about trends that we're going to carry over to next year, and that's kind of the hard part. Is I can't really predict a trend for next year. It's a really weird year, so I think you guys are going to have a hard time with putting something together from the best information you're getting, anyways. But good for you guys for doing that. But my prediction, and knowing, like, my wife's a nurse, and the other people in our cohort are heavily involved with the situation. Like the one fella, my best friend, he's a VP executive in an oil company. So we're looking at how the oil industry is declining, but he's also the leader of the COVID team for everything. So he's always gathering information about COVID. And my wife's a nurse in emergency and sees a lot of stuff through COVID there. And one of our other best friends is a director of the Children's Hospital. So we're getting a lot of different sources of information. And it's weird right now. I don't pay attention to the news, honestly, very much. It's probably for the better, I think, for my own personal life. But the first wave of COVID, had like a lot less people that were affected or diagnosed. But the second wave, I mean, albeit they are testing a lot more people, of course, but the second wave seems to be a lot stronger. But but hearing it in the news, or the shock factor is not really as there. So I think the pandemic is worsening, and it's hard to predict where that's going to go. I'm sure over time it's going to blow over, but there's still going to be some long-term effects from that. And I think it's going to carry easily into next year. I mean, hopefully kids are still going to school and there's some normalcy, I guess, for people going to work. So they're still earning income, but we've seen a ton of small businesses all around Cochrane, fail, and things like restaurants and all this kind of different luxury things, right, are going down. And if they're not paying their tax, or contributing to that income stream for like local governments or national government, it just kind of snowballs. So, and I foresee, Canada having given out so much money to all these small business owners. I didn't cash in on anything, not saying that's good or bad, but I just don't think I had the opportunity in my situation to do that. But it's a lot of money that's gone out, and it's going to have to get paid back. Like, you just can't keep printing and diluting our money in the country. We're going to have to borrow from somewhere, and the whole world's in the same boat. So I think things are going to just have to go downhill and decline, like, recession or whatever you want to call it. Like, I'm honestly not an expert in all this kind of thing, but I can foresee this perfect storm of, a lot of oil energy from Alberta, especially, which is a good contribution to Canada as well, like going down. I don't know what other industries are like in other countries around the world, from people that use Jobber, but if their major industries are going down as well. But with like the national debt and have people having to pay it back, I don't know if taxes are going to go up or what, but I think people are going to basically, end of the day, have less money, and they're not going to have the money that they have now to get their tree work done or get their pools maintained or renovate their house or do all these things. Like, they may be done now, but I think next year it's going to start to see a bit of this feel, and probably even the year after, it's going to be a long decline. So I think people are going to have to get really creative in what they do and probably diversify their businesses in order to kind of weather the storm.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, this is kind of a big question and maybe impossible to answer, and you touched on it a bit in diversifying your business. How do you think other arborists and landscapers, or whatever, how do you think they might adapt to that potential decline in business?
Well, I think the first knee-jerk reaction is obviously layoffs. People downsize. If they're not getting as much volume of work, they can probably still stay in business. Like, for example, people in Calgary who have more production crews, they might have one or two crews of 2 to 4 people each going out and doing tree work. And I don't know if that's similar to landscaping or other businesses out there. But downsizing is definitely the first reality, but unfortunately that puts a bunch of people out of work, or maybe they take pay cuts. Maybe they start liquidating some of their debt that they have through equipment and things, like selling off trucks. In my situation, I'm trying to diversify, so maybe that's something else that they would be able to do, whether it's gathering education or whatever. Like, for myself, being a seasonal worker, I'm trying to put a lot of my earnings back into education. So I'm continuously doing other courses or things that interest me, but in similar fields that all kind of relate and all touch together. Actually recently did a permaculture course. I don't know if people know what permaculture is. You can try and Google it, but it can be applied to anything in the world, whether it's your family or business or like the outdoors that people do. So basically, you take all of your different needs and yields from every aspect of your life or whatever you're doing. That's your garden, and you tie them together. So I mean, you have rainwater on your roof. You harvest your rainwater and use that for your lawn, and it's like now you're not so reliant on city rainwater, and you use that water to grow food for yourself. So you're not so reliant on the supply chain. So I think making yourself more sustainable is the way to go, and it also saves money. You know, basically not trying to create so much waste, whether it's actual physical waste or it's just waste of time or not being as efficient as you could be with your business. So trying to tighten those things up, I think, is very important. And as far as diversification, I mean, I've expanded from doing, say, tree work into more soil science, right? I came across the health of trees, and I did some courses on insect and disease management, and that led me into the soil. And then I found out that the soil contributes to so much in the world, like whether it's agriculture or gardening or plants and all that kind of stuff. So I've become more of an environmental side of things. And I saw this opportunity where the world is shifting and the oil industry, you know, is coming to an end. There's going to be a time where peak oil is coming. It's like a reality. And these crops are running out. I don't know if anyone's ever watched like Kiss the Ground or any of these other movies that are coming out. It's starting to become more mainstream. We start seeing stuff on Netflix about it. So I'm trying to align myself not only as a business opportunity to help consult on these sort of things, but to protect myself and my own family, my own friends, and our community. Like, I think the world is going to have to shift back into that, not being so abroad and so connected through like social media and the internet and relying on everything out there to come to you, like the convenience of going to the grocery stores. But you're going to have some sort of self reliance and resiliency to all this kind of thing. So people are going to start shifting their minds, and it often takes a bit of a rock bottom moment for people to start changing the way they think. But I want to be there to help those people and, you know, earn a modest income doing it if tree care is not going to carry me through, and help people, you know, use permaculture to do their yards or their land, or farmers to switch over to better practices that are more regenerative for the environment and, you know, produces better high quality food for themselves, all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting. I have a ton going on, and I think that's what people need to do, is just get interested in other things that they can be doing and basically diversify. Anything you can diversify is kind of the way to go.
Yeah. You touched on a ton of really good points there that I want to dig into.
Yeah, sorry, long answer.
No, that's great. I just like I'm trying to write things down so I don't forget and I can actually ask you these questions.
No problem.
You kind of touched on like growing your knowledge, sort of investing in yourself, and you know, expanding your services beyond tree care.
Yeah,
So yeah, I want to like dig into that a little bit more.
sure.
Just because I see that it's also it's interesting because so many like we're just used to this convenience economy of, you know, ordering something online and getting it, and kind of, as you said, you have all these sources from all over the place where you get your stuff from.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting point of like making yourself more reliable and like knowledgeable, and more giving yourself the tools to do things. So
Yeah.
what do you so I just kind of want to talk about like teaching your customers, like giving them more knowledge to do these things on their own. It's not really a
Mhm.
question, more of a comment.
Yeah, no, I can speak on a few things. I can just expand kind of on what I said too, I guess. I can give you some more examples of things that I'm doing. So one of them is like I've signed up for the landscape horticulture program. It's an apprenticeship program in Olds here in Alberta, halfway kind of between us, or not really halfway, but closer to me. But it's a way I can expand on my education. And a lot of these things, like trades, for example, are subsidized from the government already to encourage people to go to school and become a tradesperson. So landscape horticulture ties in beautifully with arboriculture and the tree health and all that sort of thing. So having it being subsidized is great if you don't have a ton of earnings. They subsidize basically $1,500, and it costs about $1,000 to go each semester. You do have to find a job first to kind of start out, or someone to sponsor you. I'm lucky enough that I kind of work in conjunction with some other people in town through collaboration, which is something else we can talk about as well, that are able to sponsor me so I can use a lot of my tree hours to contribute towards getting some more training. So this additional training helps a lot because on the job that I currently do, I often do a lot of tree consultations. So I not only do pruning and removals of trees, but I'll go there and talk to people about why their trees are sick and things that they can do to amend the soil or their practice to keep their trees healthy, right? Trees are really expensive. So, I mean, ultimately they want a beautiful tree and they want to save money. So by having me come and consult, I can lead them in the right direction to give them the right resources. But when I go there and I look at someone's tree, I don't want to go there and just be ignorant to everything else in their yard, for example, right? I'm sure there's people come across this as landscapers. Like landscapers are asked, oh, hey, can you prune my tree all the time? And I see it. I'm sure not all landscapers are poor at pruning trees, but it's not their specialty. It's like what I do as like my job day to day, right? So like, why not as a landscaper go and get some arborist courses and learn how to prune trees properly and then offer that more as a service? Like, once you feel confident doing it. I don't mean people like going around and selling treatments or different things like, like snake oil and duping people. That's definitely the wrong thing to do. And I hope people don't, can check their morals and not do that kind of thing. But getting the proper education first and then doing that, or collaborate with people that do similar work in your community where you can learn from them and they can come and learn from you, and literally build that community to help each other out. Like a lot of people are using like trade systems out there. I think it's somewhat illegal, but I think it's somewhat a reality that, if you can offer your services and your skills to people directly around you, whether it's other businesses or residents, and they can trade you with something that they're good at, then there's no exchange of money and the services are all getting done. And you become, again, like I said, like this small community, kind of like going back in time where people would have to do this sort of thing. You had your local blacksmith, your local, farmer that provided milk or whatever. Like, that's kind of the way I think things are going. It's going to be slow, but there's ways you can incorporate that now into your life. So I'm hoping to have this landscape horticulture program and be able to talk about people's trees, but also talk about the patio and the walkway they want to put in and how that's going to affect the trees, or the proper way to do that. And like if I want to design their yard for permaculture, I can also design the hardscaping and the infrastructure. And it's like now I've completely expanded from a tree company into a whole outdoor space, type plans, and even start implementing them. Or that's where the collaboration comes in. Or if I can have a company that can do the hardscaping for me, maybe there's finder's fees that you can do to exchange things to make yourself more sustainable as a business as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Those are some really creative solutions to, this new sort of world that we're heading into. And it's interesting how you kind of touched on it, how we might be reverting back to the olden days of, those trades, like collaborating more with your community. I feel like we can go either in the convenience economy direction, or we can go in this hyper local kind of sustainable direction. So it's very, very interesting. Good, really good points there.
Hmm.
So another question for you: what has this year taught you about running a business specifically?
Oh man.
Like this crazy year.
I know. I don't know if people have a background about me. They can listen to like a podcast that Jobber had where I talked about
Yes.
some of my business and how I became what I am now. That would really help. But long story short,
I did listen, by the way.
oh,
Filled by
awesome.
you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It was really good. You guys did a really great job with that. They cut it down nicely. It's perfectly edited. But I was a firefighter EMT for a long time. And then last year, I started COCHRANE Tree Care, my own business, with limited skills in the beginning. And then gathered that skill and education quickly and implemented it. I found mentors and things like that to help me out because I never want to do something bad and like cut someone's tree that I shouldn't be, all that kind of stuff. So, but anyways, last year was my first year. So this was my second year, I guess, but it was my first year where I started out right from the beginning, the full year. So I had some jobs already booked in the early spring, but things I learned from this year. Oh man, um, I think the collaboration thing I learned is huge. Like as far as like marketing is really big, but being creative with marketing. So um, I guess I should step even back further from that. Like in order for me anyway, and I think other people too, in order to be creative and create new opportunities, you have to have like an open mind and you have to have time to do that. So when you're running back and forth, to jobs every single day, and I've gotten this trap a bunch of times, you're booked Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday, and you're gone all day long. So all you do is get back. You barely even clean up your gear, and you head inside, and all you do want is, eat and have a beer and chat to your family quick before they go to bed, and kind of decompress, I guess, and you just keep repeating the cycle. But you're leaving out any time for growth and expansion and education and collaboration. So I've learned that I need to schedule that in. I've also learned some of that from some of the mentors that I've worked with, some people that are wise and have been doing this work for a long time or similar work, and they're good business people as well. So I would stop scheduling, Fridays, and I would focus on just working 4 days a week or 3 days a week. Um, and then I would try and bring some with me, maybe to help out. So I also learned that having an employee, at least casually, really helps a lot. Like it helps you get through the day a lot better and allows you to answer some phone calls and get some things done too in the day while you're working, but also makes work more enjoyable. I mean, you're providing some income for another person that's in your community. In my case, it's a friend that actually lives across the street. So I'm helping out their family as well, which is awesome. And then, they put their money in turn back into the community buying things as well. Um, but having those Fridays open and things like that, it allows me to connect. And I'm big into like Instagram and social media. It's kind of how I connect with a lot of people. It's just, it's not invasive, and when people have time to reply to you, they can. So I reach out and I use kind of a shotgun approach too with new opportunities. So I keep in touch with the other local businesses or collaborations or the mentors that I have, and even just chatting like with you or whatever. It just spurs new ideas and new hope and inspiration for things to do. So that's what I did. I went and did a course one time, took some days off, learned a little bit more. I was able to network, met a whole bunch of people that were in similar businesses, and those people would come down and shadow me, and I would go up and shadow them. We'd come up with other ideas of like, hey, let's take this other course together and expand our businesses, or like, here, maybe you can do this business and recommend them to me, and I'll do that. You know what I mean? It's like probably just kind of repeating myself, but I think that is so essential to continue on. Like, it's okay to be, I think, sustainable and just maintain if that's what you want to do. And a lot of people, I think, are okay with that, but I kind of want to be fluid and be able to be adaptable, especially in these new trends that we're talking about, to kind of weather that storm again and like direct the sails of the ship, in the right direction that I want to go and not just get blown over by this craziness. So yeah, definitely leaving time available and getting education is huge.
Yeah, I love that. Like literally scheduling in time in your calendar. Because a lot of people just say, oh, I'll do this or I'll do this. But I guess if you don't put it in, if you don't make the time,
Yeah, and honestly,
you can't commit.
inevitably, it gets filled up, but it gets filled up with stuff that needed to get done anyway. So you're a better business person anyway. Like, there's always mistakes. You missed someone's job, you forgot to book them in, or they have new needs, or they have, something else they want you to do is going to take another day. But you already have these days booked in, and they're going to fill up, no problem. And if they don't fill up, well, you have a day you can spend with your family and decompress again. So you feel better and fresher when you do go back to work and you do a better job. So it's really important, I think, to have some time outside of work.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that. That's awesome. Okay, I have another question. It's based off of the podcast, actually. You said something and it kind of triggered something in me, but you're going to have to bear with me because I don't know if it's going to be very clear when I
No
ask
worries.
it. In the podcast, you talked about being this concept of being a mature professional and like, having competitive pricing, but not necessarily, having the lowest price, which just gets you the job. Could you talk a little bit about how to sort of like move forward and be that mature professional, which, you know, you got from your, I think it was 16 years in your previous career, to now bringing that to this career, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, Definitely difficult, I think. I think a lot of it comes with life experience. So remember earlier I touched on, people needing to have some kind of rock bottom moment, it seems like, in their lives before they can make a change. Hopefully that's not the case for everyone. I mean, I went through being diagnosed with PTSD from my previous career, saw just the most terrible things from everyone's lives, from Edmonton and Red Deer and everywhere I went. And it just became so normal. And then after you have to go through this major life shift change, I don't know what it is, but it just changes the way you think, right? But I mean, looking back now, there's a lot of transferable skill from a completely different career. Like, there's a ton of great communication skills that I learned through that job, and just how to present yourself professionally to people, how to talk to people from all walks of life, and whether they're and all mental spaces that they're in, whether they're upset or they're happy or whatever. So that is huge. And I've, after talking to my friend from a VP from that oil company, like, a lot of the things that he deals with too day to day are all just personal issues, and it all comes down to this person talking about that person, or not hearing the communication correctly from someone else. Like, it's not about being these elite professionals that all just know exactly what they're doing. Like, it all comes down to communication and how to interact with people. So I think that is huge, and that can come from any experience you have in the past. So, but in order to be what I think is a mature professional, I mean, I think you do need some years under your belt. It's not to say there aren't, 20-year-olds out there that are still very mature and very smart. And I think a lot of them do have some insight into kind of this thing. But I think you need to look inside, on a deeper level to get to know yourself too. Like, I explored meditation and all sorts of crazy stuff, like what's, the point of life and consciousness and all this kind of stuff. But that all came from those rock bottom moments. And when I went through this permaculture course where people are making these huge life changes, they used to do something completely different. They learned about permaculture, and they come out of that life-changing course, which, for a plug, by the way, is Verge Permaculture in Calgary. Anyone should look it up. He's got a great YouTube, but a lot of it's kind of revolved around gardening and all that kind of thing too, but it applies to so many things. But anyways, all these people in the course also had some sort of weird life change. They got a divorce, or someone had died in their family, or they lost their job completely, like just things that shook them up, right? So that opens you to thinking in a different way and gives you different insight on things. So I think that becomes a huge part of being a mature professional as well, because I am very new in arboriculture and being an arborist. When you compare yourself to, or myself to, other companies around that have been doing it for a very long time. But I think in some aspects, I've kind of high sped myself and caught up, if not surpassed, a lot of those people in at least the way I think and the way I approach things and my concern for it. But I mean, I don't have the years of experience that they have when it's, comes to understanding the way a piece of wood is going to move when you rig it up and you got to cut it down. Like, I haven't seen that over and over and over again. So I do lack a lot of experience in some of those skill-based things, or even running a business too. Like, I'm doing well, it's successful, but yeah, it's difficult to put. Do you have any other, did I touch on kind of what you were thinking, or?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, what's great about your perspective is that you are a new business owner, and I don't think we only just want to hear from entrepreneurs who've been in it for 30 years. We want every perspective. So I think that's a really important point to keep in mind, and it's great for people to hear.
Yeah, and sorry, let me cut you off, but I'm
No
trying to think
worries.
of ways I can recommend for people, if they don't feel like they are a mature professional yet, or they kind of have an insight of kind of what that is or what they want to be. I think ways you can do that is find someone that can be your mentor. I think that's really important. And literally become interested in what they're doing and learn from them and see how they work and how they interact with people. You can join other clubs or hobbies. It's difficult now to have that face-to-face contact with people doing that sort of thing, but maybe you can do it virtually too. But maybe learn about public speaking, maybe, like I said, go back to education in different fields that are somewhat relatable, or take concern and care in some of the world dynamics that are happening around you, and just get more educated, I guess. Like, don't be ignorant to those things or ignore certain things that you've been thinking about in the past. Like, oh, I should really try and understand what this whole Black Lives Matter, racism thing is about. People just, easily, quickly dismiss it, including myself a lot of times. But maybe there's something there you should go look into if you've never known anything about it, and understand what's going on. Like, understand how humans interact with each other and what their belief systems are, whether it's your belief system or not, but just understand maybe more. And I think that can make people a mature professional pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's great. And just an overall good person, a
Yeah,
knowledgeable person. That's awesome.
yeah.
That's a
You
really
don't,
interesting perspective. I like that.
yeah.
Um, so another one, which also might be difficult to answer, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. It's been such a crazy year. It's been, super emotional, and difficult for many people all over the world, all across the country. What would you say to an entrepreneur who's, having trouble, like, kind of keeping the emotions out of their business? Maybe they don't get a job and they're upset. Like, what is the best way to deal with that type of thing when life is so difficult right now?
Do you mean like emotion, like day to day with like communication with customers and that sort of thing? Or do you mean like,
Yeah, I think just kind of, if they don't get a job, and they see another competitor has got the job, and maybe things are especially tough. Business
yeah.
might not be very strong. Like, how do you kind of handle that? How do you handle, like, the rejection, or just like keeping your emotions out of your business and just focusing on business, if that
Yeah.
makes sense?
Yeah, I know. And it's so easy to say, like, put your head down and move forward and don't worry about it. Like, you hear about that kind of stuff, or like, people are trying to get over depression or something. And it's like, oh, just don't think about the bad things and think about all the good things. And it's like, okay, those are all good skills. You can try and practice them. But the reality is, emotion is real, and everyone has emotion, and you respond to it. Um, there's literally techniques you can use through meditation that physically change your brain, to be honest, that work with your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex, because there are chemical responses that when something happens to you that you don't like, your brain dumps a bunch of chemicals in there, similar to your fight or flight response. Cortisol is a big stressor that comes out in your brain, and affects your body physically. So if you practice things that are relaxing or meditation to get in tune with these feelings, it not only puts you in tune with them so you can control them a bit better, but also buffers them. So you don't have this big dump. And it's like clinically been proven through like fMRIs that you don't respond. And I know from personal anecdotal experience that you don't respond the same way you would without it, I would say. I mean, it takes a little bit of time to build up to something like that, but that's something physically you can do, or other similar things that will change the chemistry in your brain. So you don't have this knee-jerk reaction of anger, and you just kind of chill to it. And I know like antidepressives or some of those medications work along the same lines. They basically dull that physical response in your brain, so you don't have so much dump of things that make you sad or stressed out. But they also kind of block some of your serotonins and dopamines as well, so you don't have the highs. This is getting deep onto that sort of side of things, and I don't really like those medications, which I've had to try in the past when things were, terrible for me and they served their purpose. But I've, since basically cleaned myself up, and I don't honestly meditate anymore either, because I went too deep into that and had too much of a real experience there, and it's just too much to think about. But anyways, I'll digress back to what I was talking about. But meditation is one key, or things similar, to stop that response. But because I think it is a reality, and I think emotion is also a good thing too. It's not always bad, right? So if I go around and think that I'm losing jobs to someone else in town who's doing it cheaper, I mean, for one, that is the reality that's going to happen. I do try and focus on the positives of things that I am getting and doing, because I'm sure there's a lot of jobs too where someone's called me and, I think I may have overquoted, especially after I've done the job and I realized how easy it was, which also comes from years of experience. I mean, 2 years for me. But I mean, it does come from the experience that I do have, where I have gotten better and a job goes really smoothly, and I think, oh man, maybe I quoted too much. And it's like, well, no, I had these good days, I guess you'd say, where you earn more money for what you kind of did. And those kind of balance out the days where you maybe lose some other jobs. And honestly, you probably can't physically handle doing every job anyways. And there's going to be all different types of businesses out there that you're competing with. Some that just work on the weekends, or they only do 1 day a week and they don't have as much equipment as you, and they just want to make a few extra bucks. Like, they're trying to. They may not be as wise to knowing how to quote and do things appropriately. They're probably not trying to screw you over, and if you do have a problem with somebody or a certain business, I know it's super hard and I'm guilty for it too. But again, going back to the communication, if you know these people, go and talk to them and explain your concerns with them. Like, don't have it out maybe, but like, or if that's the case that you need to do that, whatever, but try and come to a common ground and understand what they're doing and let them understand what your concerns are. And then all of that pressure and weight in your shoulders is lifted from that, and that will help you a ton, and you won't be bottled up in stress about all this kind of stuff. And then you won't be putting that onto your customers, getting upset with them, or that's why I try and diversify my education too, because I go to people, and some people don't look at trees obviously the same way as I do. They want to cut their perfectly good healthy tree down, and I'm literally at the point sometimes now where I'll just be like, I'm not cutting it down, sorry. And I know someone else is going to do it, but I'll try and convince them to keep their tree and spend extra time with them and do that. And I feel good about that. So it's like the opposite of getting stressed out and, feeling so conflicted, like you were mentioning with your question. But you can practice things like that to make you feel good about what you're doing too, on the opposite side, to try and balance things out. So, I guess in conclusion, all I could say is that it's obvious that, like, the world is changing in a very unusual way right now, and everything seems to be coming to a bit of a peak, whether it's agriculture and food, transportation, like supply chains, unusual governments in power, like our industries, like oil, are starting to decline like heavily. Even some of the big companies, like I heard Shell is investing a lot now in different renewable energy sources and totally diversifying and shifting that way. Like, they see an end as well. So, day to day, people are kind of still acting the same and spending the same. Like, I was at the mall the other day. It's weird we're wearing masks, but I mean, people are still buying Starbucks. Like, it's no big deal. Like, we're carrying on, but in behind the scenes, I think things are changing really quickly. Maybe in the end for the better, but I think it's going to have to go through a really big struggling phase. So I think people just need to understand that is happening. It's a reality, and they need to prepare for it. And we're lucky right now that we're still in the buy your Starbucks phase, that there is still time. Like, I'm hoping I'm still going to get to go to my course this February, and I may not be able to. I mean, I guess plan B will be that it could be online, but I hope I can still do these things to continue on. But I mean, it's a reality that those things may be canceled. So just do what you can now, and have a bit of a backup plan. I guess on a personal level, we were renting this home in Cochrane when we first came down because we didn't know like what we wanted to do or where to spend our money. And I received money from WCB, for example, because I was restricted to be a first responder anymore. So just like if someone were to break their arm and they can't, you know, be a baseball pitcher anymore or whatever they do, they're using their arm, they get compensated for what their old wage was. You know, it's not very much, but we've aligned our lives and our own personal spending to be able to afford things like our rent and, you know, our main um, costs, you know, from that reliable stream of money. And we've always been used to having a job like firefighting or whatever, something that was in like healthcare that was really structured, you know, part of a union. You knew exactly how much you're getting paid forever. If you have your own business, things can change quickly, as people know, and you could be making tons of money, you know, making hay when the sun shines kind of thing, but then it could get really cloudy here coming up quick. So you may need to be banking that money away, diversifying what you do to have different alternate revenue streams. Or in our case, we had an opportunity here, getting back to what I was talking about, to purchase a new home because the owners want to sell this home. So we were getting caught up in, you know, building a new home and getting the next level up that we want, what we want to spend. But then I become reliant on the money that I'm earning from my small business, and I don't know what the future years are to come. And maybe signing up for a mortgage for 25 years right now is not the best idea. Well, maybe it's an okay idea, but maybe for not the amount that I originally wanted, right? We're going to keep the costs now lower to the sustainable income that I do have, say through WCB or through my wife's work. And then everything extra from tree work is extra. It's not something that I completely rely on. And I know a lot of the energy sector people out there, you see it, not everyone's like this, but you know, they have a lot of toys, they have trailers, they have boats, they have side by sides, they have a big acreage, but you know, they may not have a job here next year. So I would caution people against overspending and, you know, thinking that things are going to be the same forever. They may get good, may get bad, but I think mostly it's going to get bad.
Yeah. Yeah, all great advice. It's yeah, it's a shame how things have been, but I think eventually we'll be okay and things will get better. Hopefully.
Ah, you're an optimist.
Yeah,
It'll be okay.
gotta be.
Well,
um,
they have to be. So maybe this will be
yeah,
the that big rock bottom change for a lot of people, where everyone's going to change their mind, and it's going to maybe connect people. You know, you're going to
yeah,
get to know
that's
your
a good
neighbors,
point.
and it's your personal life's going to get better. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah, I think yeah, as you said, you kind of talked about this in the chat. Like, you know, there's a lot of good that could come out of it. Um, so let's hope and let's
Yes,
work towards that.
and good can come out of it. That's the right way of thinking. That's another thing that permaculture is really based on is turning problems into solutions. So
Mm,
this right now going on, big problem, but yeah, what are the good things that are going to come out of it? And as a business owner, you know, how can you change what you do to make these problems part of your solution? So that's how you got to think about it.
yeah, that's awesome. And I'm